You get on base, we win. You don't, we lose. And I hate losing, Chavi. I hate it. I hate losing more than I even want to win.
That's actor Brad Pitt playing real-life Major League Baseball manager Billy Beane in the film Moneyball. And what his character is describing here is actually a fundamental human truth, and that is people hate to lose. In fact, we hate to lose so much that the psychological pain of losing is twice as powerful as the joy of winning. So what is it about losing that people hate so much? Why will they go to such incredible lengths to avoid it? And how can we, as business owners, entrepreneurs, designers, and marketers, use it in an ethical way to grow our business? Loss aversion is one of the most powerful psychological tendencies that people have. It's a force that acts on us in often unseen ways. And to be frank, it's also often abused in the worlds of marketing and business. One simple and pretty benign example of loss aversion is when a brand runs a 24-hour sale. People know the sale is going to end in 24 hours, so the message grabs their attention and they're just more likely to browse and buy. And I say this is pretty benign because, it's rooted in truth. A sale just can't go on forever. That's why it's a sale. But loss aversion, when overused or used unethically, can break trust with your buyers and erode or even destroy your brand over time. And in fact, I've got a whole episode coming up on how overusing loss aversion tactics like this has killed multiple billion-dollar brands. So make sure to follow the podcast so you get notified when it drops. An example of an unethical use of loss aversion that we've all probably come across, knowingly or not, is when you see a scammy company or a guru telling people to use a technique like false scarcity. So telling people you only have 100 products available, so they need to buy now and pay more because you could run out at any second. When in actual fact, that scammy brand has 10,000 of these products, and they're flat out lying because they know how powerful the idea of losing out can be to driving sales. That's an example of taking advantage of people's tendency toward loss aversion in a negative way, and that's not okay. In fact, false scarcity is illegal in a lot of places, so we definitely don't want to do it. But as gross and as common of an example that this is, it also underlines just how powerful loss aversion is and why bad actors can and do exploit it. But if there's one thing to know about loss aversion, it's that, like many buyer psychology principles, it's a double-edged sword. Just as people can use it with bad or sneaky intent, you can also use it to help people make better and more informed choices. In one example of using loss aversion to help people make better choices, Daniel Kahneman, a famous behavioral scientist and Nobel laureate, described a study he ran to see if using loss aversion might improve opt-in rates for a specific surgery with a relatively low risk but high potential upside. You see, the low-risk procedure wasn't getting many patients to opt in, and doctors were confused as to why this was the case, given its generally positive outcomes and high success rates. So they partnered with a behavioral science research team who figured out that this low opt-in rate didn't have anything to do with the surgery itself, but was related to how the treatment options were being presented to patients. And the research team had a hunch that loss aversion was playing a big role in those decisions. So the research team decided to do an experiment to test their theory. They framed the risks of the surgery as either a potential loss or a potential gain. So when the surgery was framed as a gain, doctors would tell patients the 1-month survival rate of this particular surgery is 90%, which is pretty good. Now compare that surgery framed as a loss. Doctors would tell their patients there is a 10% chance of death in the month post-surgery. That's the same information, but it just sounds a lot riskier, like thinking of a glass as half empty or half full. Here's what happened. When the surgery was framed as a gain, so when doctors referenced the survival rate, 84% of the patients chose to go for it. But when the surgery was framed as a loss, only 50% opted in. That simple application of loss aversion increased the rate of surgery opt-ins by 54% and helped more people make an informed and net positive decision. Okay, so we've talked about a positive application of loss aversion, but we also need to talk a little bit more about the downsides so that we, as the ethical choice hackers that we are, can use loss aversion to help our customers, not trick or manipulate them. One of the big dangers of overusing loss aversion is that it can create feelings of anxiety. A lot of folks call this FOMO, or the fear of missing out. It's a form of social anxiety that makes people scared that everyone is going to get or do or have something that they won't be able to get their hands on. That feeling of being left out can be overwhelming for some people, and one study found that 70% of people have suffered from anxiety-inducing FOMO. You can see the deliberate misuse of loss aversion and FOMO in business, but you can also see it in politics. When a politician says that Group A is going to take something from Group B, and they're trying to get Group B to vote for them, that's usually a red flag that they're deliberately using loss aversion in a sketchy and manipulative way. This dark side of loss aversion can also take the form of something called doom scrolling. This phenomenon is when people are unable to tear themselves away from negative news feeds for hours at a time. Now, TikTok is where I tend to doom scroll, but you might do it on Facebook or LinkedIn or even by searching through news sites. When people get caught up in doom scrolling, they can't stop feeding themselves a steady diet of negativity. They're afraid they might miss out on some key piece of information or breaking story if they stop scrolling. That's compounded by the adrenaline charge that we get from reading a negative or sensational headline. Brian Barish, the president of Cambir Investors, described the dark side of loss aversion this way, quote, "The ability to scare the hell out of people is much greater than the ability to attract them." So now that our eyes have been opened to both the positive and potential negative uses of loss aversion, how can we use it to motivate action and grow our business? Well, here's a few common loss aversion tools. First, you can be transparent about how much stock or available client spots you have, how many people are interested in or looking at them, and then clearly communicate to potential customers or clients when they're running out. This works because it combines transparency and honesty and loss aversion in a way that's genuinely helpful for your customers. If someone is interested in something but they haven't acted, they'd probably be a little upset if it was running out but nobody told them. This actually happened to me, house hunting. There was a house that we loved, but we weren't 100% sold on the potential location. So we wanted to view it in the day, the night, and then during rush hour. After our second viewing, we were putting together an offer, and the real estate agent, or estate agent as we would say since this happened in England, told us that it had been sold. Apparently, he didn't feel it was urgent to mention that even though the market was ice cold, this particular property had suddenly hit the right price point and despite being on the market for more than 6 months, had attracted a lot of new interest. A little loss aversion message there to let us know that other buyers were circling would have gotten us to move a bit faster and secure the house. Instead, we missed out because we didn't have the full picture of the situation. A second way to use loss aversion to drive action is by using simple mechanics, like ticking clocks and emails to signal that a deal is ending, or even, for some brands, using tools like discounts that get lower as time goes on. So at 24 hours, your coupon code gives you 50% off, but after 12 hours rolls by, it's ticked down to only 25% off. It's worth mentioning here that how you use any psychological principle most effectively, like loss aversion, depends a lot on your specific market, brand, buyer, and industry. A discount that ticks down as time goes on might be a great fit for a fast fashion retailer like H&M, but if a luxury brand like The Row used it, it would feel like a bad match for their brand and probably pretty déclassé to its customers. I'd go so far as to say that a discount like that would damage The Row's brand in the minds of its ideal customers. But The Row could also build its brand by using loss aversion in another way, by offering a new collection in very limited quantities. That would make them feel more exclusive and higher end. Same principle applied 2 different ways. One builds the brand and the other breaks it. So when it comes to applying a principle like this to your business, don't get too caught up in the shiny potential of what it could do before you figure out if the specific way you're using it is right for you, your brand, and your customers. thank you for listening to the Choice Hacking Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, would you mind taking less than 60 seconds to rate and review it? This podcast is a labor of love. Every episode takes me 20 plus hours to create, and it really helps the podcast find new listeners when you leave a rating or a short review. And as a thank you, for a limited time, I'm offering podcast listeners a special deal on my best-selling book, Choice Hacking: How to Use Psychology and Behavioral Science to Create an Experience That Sings. You can get a digital copy of the book for free, but only for a limited time. The link to get your free book is in the show notes.